Is this thing on?
I was a big Bernie supporter. I was a national delegate as a Bernie supporter. I did support Hillary Clinton, lost the nomination. I campaigned for Hillary Clinton after that point. But I do agree that it is frustrating because I was involved previously and I was excited to see someone who held my beliefs. And I think that healthcare is a right. I think that having a house and having a roof over your head is a human right. I think that no one should be in this affluent of a country where we have this many billionaires. We should never have somebody who is struggling to pay their bills. It's absolutely criminal that we have a system where people are having to choose between their medication and their food. It's insane to me. And seeing that, I think, is hard because you only have two parties to choose from, and the Democratic Party sometimes really doesn't align with it, and you don't feel like you're represented in it. My goal, as I've gotten more and more frustrated with it, has been slowly to consolidate where I can do the most good. I can do the most concentrated Hillary, and that has been in my legislative district. I really appreciated I got redistricted out of my first LD, and I got put into the 44th,
Mhm.
and they have been such a home to energy about wanting to really push for that change. And that's because the National Party is never going to listen to one of me. They're not.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't have the money. I don't have the billion. When the DNC flies their presidential candidate out here, they like want $500,000 to go see them for a plate. But I have the ability to make my LD be better. And I have the ability to make my council matter a little bit more. And
Mhm.
I have the ability to flip an LD. And I have the ability to hopefully start influencing other LDs to start seeing what we're doing and replicate it on their area. And what I really want to start showing people is that you shouldn't have to settle for someone who just has the D behind their name. If they're just saying, hey, I'm a Democrat, we used to say anybody with a D behind their name so long as they have a pulse. What I'm hoping is that once we start showing that RLD is consistently Democrat and we're always electing Democrat, I want to hold people's feet to the fire. I think that's what we got to start training people to do is that sure, but if you're always voting with the Republicans, if you're always making room in the tent for our abusers who remove our rights, who are voting against our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ plus community, if you are removing rights for our people in the labor union, whatever it is, we'll vote you out. And I think we got to start really pushing that. And if we want to be doing that, we can create a movement from the lower levels that we can be more transformative on. Because if they're not going to listen to us at the national level, well, we'll start local and then we'll move it up to the state. And then from the state, we'll move it up to national.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for giving the audience some pathways towards activation or involvement. I do want to say, and you know this, getting in those circles, volunteering your time in those spaces, one, it takes a certain type of person, right? Passionate, driven, whatever. But the other thing is that, and you know this very well, sometimes when you enter those spaces, those organizations, you are seen as an outsider. And if you don't, one, assimilate, or two, be a nice person and make sure everybody likes you type of thing, like then you don't get anywhere. And if anything, you get pushed out, right? And like there's a double-edged sword of involvement that people don't understand until they've been in it for a little bit. You can get beat down in these organizations who are all trying to do the same thing, but you still have to deal with individuals and personalities who may or may not see the world the same way you do. And so my suggestion to folks getting into those things, and no, actually, I'm gonna have you say this because this was part of what you were saying, right? You were saying like pace yourself. That's one thing, right? Can you give them the playbook on how to be involved a little bit?
Yeah, I always say, like, when you get started, it's so tempting to take on a lot. Think that you can really do it all, especially because Right now, everyone is so full of motivation because there's so much going on and you're scared, you're stressed, you're angry. And that's a really great fuel for a fire, but it's a lot like gasoline on a fire. It's real fast and it burns out real quick. And then you find yourself really stressed. And a lot of the times you also find yourself at risk of being taken advantage of because that is the problem with these volunteer organizations is they can be predatory. And that's a really unfortunate part of volunteer work. You're not being paid for it and you don't have the protections that are afforded from certain places like workplaces and unions. So
Right.
you need to make sure that you're learning how to protect yourself. When you get involved, one, make sure that you know what you're getting involved in. Two, know what your organization is. Is it a real organization or is it somebody who's put something together on a Facebook group that could be kind of sketchy? Two, if you can, look into the history of the organization. Have they had issues with membership before that have been harassing? Have they been in the news before for problems or problematic behavior? Find out whether or not you know people in that group. It's always good to go in with friends if you possibly can, if you're new to this kind of thing. Also, get familiar with the rules. Most of these organizations use things like Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order is a great way to stop people from taking advantage of people in a meeting, but it is a double-edged sword. It's also a great way to shut people up and stop people who are new from being able to make a difference. And
Yeah,
that's a really tragic thing because it can be just as good a tool as it is a cudgel.
that's
And
right.
the important thing is protect your energy. If you find yourself being way too tired, if you find that you're always being exhausted all the time, it's okay to take your energy back and say, I can't do this. It's not worth it. But also make sure that you're not overextending and not telling people you need help. I
Yeah,
always like to check in with the volunteers who work with me when I don't hear back from them. If
that's
they,
right.
hey, I'm going to take this on and this on and this on, and then start to not hear from them, and
Right.
some small things start to get dropped, I always like to check on them. It's like, hey, you volunteered for like 7 things. Are you all right? You're gonna be able to do all these 7 things.
Right.
You felt good in the moment, but, like, are you actually all right? Because this is not a sustainable workload.
Eh,
And eventually you get up, you and I both know, eventually you get better at it. You know how to your
yeah.
pace, know your
Yeah.
inner and you're able to run the marathon because you've trained yourself for it.
Okay.
But everybody has to start somewhere. You don't climb Everest in a day. You have to really work on it. And that's the most important thing when you're starting out. And I always really worry about my volunteers. I like to really take the time to care about their mental health. And I think that's the most important thing that people can do is really take care of themselves.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you laid out that strategy and those things that new volunteers should be cognizant of because movements do take time and they take people. And the predatory volunteerism that I've seen from organizations is so real, right? Like I've literally walked into the door as somebody who's just showing up to just listen to get information about said organization, and sometimes you just get pointed out and they say, "Oh, are you willing to do this?" Or here, you should be on this committee. And it's like, you're like, "Oh, great, I'm doing something." And then like you're thrust into this world and then work is dumped on you that you may or may not be prepared to do. And you get burned out and you take financial impacts, you take emotional impacts, your physical health can be affected if you don't know how to, you know what I mean? So like, and you and I both have seen that over the years, people just burning out and being completely turned off of the mission. And it sucks, right? Okay. So the next question I have for you is what do you fear most about the next Trump presidency?
Well, I'm really going to normalize a lot of things that are not normal. The thing that I hate most is that when every time you turn on the news, we're seeing more and more that it's just business as usual. And leading up to the election, it was such an escalation. Everybody on any news channel you turn to was like, he's the next Hitler. It's going to be the end of the world if he's elected. Everybody was just saying it's like this is the end times. This
Right.
is a particular election that will define whether or not we will exist as a democracy. And now we're in the end times. And then they're just like, hey, you bring in like this crazy person in this cabinet position. And also there's this crazy new TikTok dance trend called the Trump. And also like, and you're like, what's going on? And people are like, are already acclimatizing to this insanity. We have the very first bill that's being passed in Congress is to ban one singular trans woman from using the bathrooms.
Right.
Well, she's not allowed to use the bathrooms in Congress because that's the first thing that they're going to pass in Congress. Not helping with inflation, not dealing with climate, not looking at the issues that we have with our inflation or spending, or even dealing with the issues we have in Ukraine or the
Yeah.
issues in Israel. The one thing they're really worried about is making sure that Congresswoman McBride can't use a restroom. And everyone just goes, it's not even making the news. I bet it's only on like social media. And McBride's like, this is ridiculous. And she gave in. She said, I'm just here to pass the law and it's about a bathroom. I give up. But what I'm most worried about is giving up that 1 inch means that it's going to continue going. And if we look at the rights for one woman, we're going to start seeing the loss of rights for all women. And if
Mm,
we're targeting trans women, they're going to come for everybody else. What makes me most scared is that we're seeing everything just be standardized. There's no end to it. All of the trials against Trump are being paused. All of the discussion that we had is just being, okay, fine. And Biden sat down for a nice chat in front of the fire, right up to the fact that we have to ignore the fact that Biden was on the news saying this is the only election that we have to stop the end times of democracy. They're sitting like two grandpas in front of a fire having a chat.
yeah.
How are we as people, especially people like you and I, who are going to be most affected, supposed to react to that? It's honestly horrifying to see how everything just went right back. Like it snapped into, okay, I guess we're just buckling in to figure out what crazy things are going to happen.
Right. The normalization of the insanity. That's interesting. Okay. Next question I have for you is, what do you hope most about the next Trump presidency?
What I really hope
Mhm.
is that we really get to see a movement of people who start to see behind the curtain. There is absolutely no way that the promises that were made during this election can come true. There is no way in any way that what the Republican Party
Right.
is going to happen. There's no way that eggs are going to be 99 cents. And there's no way that women are going to give up their jobs and go back to wearing little dresses and making martinis for their husbands and giving up all rights to their bodily autonomy. There is no way that we're going to give up marriage rights. There is no way that we're going to give up rights to care for our loved ones. There is no way that we're
Mm,
going to give up some of these things. And what I really hope is that we see people who really realize that one, they were sold a bill of false goods, and that two, we see people who are motivated, that they are driven by this fact that we are absolutely not going to be quiet about this. And
right.
that's what I love to see. I love to see the fact that we have, in my opinion, America is a beautiful, wonderful, gorgeous experiment. And I love this country. And I want everybody to fight for it as much as I love it. And I want them to feel that same love. And I want us to stand shoulder and shoulder in solidarity and really make sure that this 4 years is all we have to suffer. And
Right.
come time that we have another election, it is an election, and that we are united and we have a real purpose, and we get back to that and we find our purpose in this 4 years of what feels like is going to be darkness and insanity and weirdness and just weird, right? Just
Yeah.
weird. And maybe this is what it takes. Maybe 4 years of this is that reckoning. But
Sure.
I hope the best that we can get out of it is that we find that person.
Great. So the next question is, what do you believe about the people who voted opposite of you?
I believe that they have the same beliefs that I do in this country, in themselves. I believe that when they took their time and thought about it, they thought they were making the best decision. I believe that they're in a hard spot and they thought that it was the best decision at the time that they could possibly make. And I believe that at the heart of it, they did their best.
Very, very good and light-sided emotions. I'm going to say light-sided emotions because I'm a Star Wars fan. Very good light-sided emotions in that response. And I'm curious though, if it, what do you believe about like as taking the stance of an undecided voter in the primary? And so this might not be a fair question, but I'm really curious. What do you think about the people who voted opposite of you in terms of like voting for the continuity, the status quo of what's happening over there in Palestine and Israel?
I think that they weren't voting against Palestinian people. I don't think in any way that they were like, I don't think anyone was like mean about it in any way. I think that it was more than mean to take opposition to the concept of the Republican side. I believe that we needed to rally behind a candidate and we needed to rally behind a candidate now. I'm more of a focus on the national versus the international. Really think that was the focus. I don't think that it was a okay, yeah, I get it. Things are really bad over there, but things aren't great here either. And I need to focus here. And I like to think a lot of times that there's not a malicious like hatred when it comes down to it. I think that it really is good-hearted intentions, but focus maybe in a spot that I don't agree with.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for answering that. The next question is, what is the worst thing about society to you?
I think the worst part of society is our focus on greed and capitalism. The concept that I want mine is probably the worst because if our only focus is on what we can have and what we can afford and that what we can be and what we can own is what defines us, I think that is a cancerous, awful, hateful thought. I was raised with the concept of charity and that even if you're doing better than somebody else, you should find a way to get that person to where you are, even if you're only slightly better than them. Even if what makes you doing slightly better is that you have new clothes and they are having to buy secondhand. Well, you want to find a way that they can eventually get new clothes. Well, our job is to care and uplift our neighbors, even if we don't know them. And I think once we get away from that thought and we think to ourselves, all I need is more and more money, there's a point in which no money can ever make you happy, in my opinion. The
Mm.
worst thing we ever did was we thought that these corporations are people and they have rights. I think the worst thing that we did is that we've been venerating people for having money and not for what they've done for society. We think that Elon Musk is like some great person, and yet we don't look at how much work Jimmy Carter has done building homes for the homeless. We should always be focusing on people that are talking about what we give back and not what we take. And ideally, our job should always be helping others and uplifting others. And if we're not doing that, I don't think we're in the right world.
Ve-
And that is the worst part about society is that we're stuck in this country that is just icky capitalist. I hate it.
Sure. A lot to unpack with that. And then, unfortunately, we don't have much time since I have a back-to-back interview today, but future conversations in the future for sure. So the next question is, what do you believe is one reason the Trump and the largely Republican Congress was elected?
I think it was because they had so long to run a campaign. They
Yeah.
had Trump had 4 years of a presidency to run it, and then 4 years of Biden being president to run. And Kamala Harris only had 107 days. That is a monumental task. And I want to say that Kamala Harris ran an incredible campaign. Her and Walz for 107 days were absolutely killing it. There was no gap left in their tank. I think that for what they did, that was absolutely incredible. I wish we could have run a real campaign against him because I think we would have seen a real fight. But when it comes down to it, Trump was just stronger on having all that time. He had all that time, and they had all that time to not let something pass in Congress. They had all that time to block what was promised, what was college debt relief. They had all that time to pass relief for loans for new home buyers. They had all that time to drive up the prices of gas and to block us being able to break up monopolies at Kroger and things like that, which drives up the price of groceries. They did so much to make it impossible for anything to get past that. It just worked out that way that they were able to say, hey, look, the Democrats have done nothing for you. And it was just an impossible race in 107 days.
Yeah, say that because a good example is the border bill that Congress and, apparently Vice President Harris helped to put together, but was shut down by Trump, which ultimately led to its failure. There could have been some solutions on people's concern with the border security. And yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. The next question is, do you feel like you did enough to affect the election in the way you wanted to see it go?
I think that every person at our level did. I think that I did everything that I could. I waved every sign. I knocked every door. I did everything that I could as a singular voter who is just a PCO and a local volunteer.
Yeah.
That's all. And that's all that any of us can imagine doing. Now, if I wanted to say that I could do more, could I have gone to the DNC headquarters and slammed this on the doors and been like,
yeah, better messages.
Going to be arrested. But then I probably could have done I probably could have done more. But realistically, I did everything that I could. And that the voters and the people who have come to me who have been I wish I could have done more. I always want to tell them, you did everything. And you can't blame yourself because that's unfair. You did.
And there's institutions of individuals who are controlling the narrative, controlling the strategy, who just dropped the ball or didn't focus on the correct things. But okay, so the last question I have is, what do you want to say to yourself 4 years in the future?
I guess I want to say that I hope that I'm drinking champagne.
In celebration of something, or?
I hope that I'm drinking champagne and I'm celebrating and that my plans have come to fruition.
Excellent. That's good. Well, and I hope so too. I hope that we all are celebrating in the next 4 years. I am almost reminded constantly that it is not yet January 20th. Said person is not technically in office. So it's it feels like it's been 4 years or 2 years already. You know what I mean? It's been not even 2 weeks. It's gosh, dang. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, we're just trapped in that weird liminal cycle where he somehow is and is not.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, Hillary, I very much appreciate you and your leadership and involvement in the community. You are a leader, and I'm glad you know that because we need people like you, leaders, people who are passionate, who know how to navigate the system, who know how to get things done, to recognize their power and help bring people along because and I hate to say there's so much work to do because I want to give grace to those who have been working so hard for so long. You know what I mean? But it's we got to work. And that's why I created this podcast. And that's why we're all going to continue to do the work the best that we can.
Thank you. I appreciate everything that you're doing, getting that narrative going. And you're right. There is work to be done. And those of us who've been doing the work, we know it. And those of us who are stepping into the work, we're ready to know.
Yes. But pace yourself. Pace yourself when you're stepping into it. Pace yourself. All right, Hillary. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day. In conclusion, we are all different, but we are all also the same. What matters is we recognize that and move forward to make a better world for all of us. Thanks again.